The gym was packed, but the silence hung heavy in the air, as if everyone were waiting for a miracle. The cameras were already in place. Reporters jostled for space to catch every word. And there he was, Muhammad Ali, with the confident smile that had become his trademark. Even before stepping into the ring against Sonny Liston, Ali faced the reporters and, in the same confident voice he used to taunt his opponents, declared, "He's going down in the 6th round. Mark that down, it won't go any further." Many laughed. Others shook their heads, convinced the loudmouthed young man was digging his own grave. After all, he was facing one of the most feared men in boxing, a world champion, brutal and relentless. But Ali wasn't bluffing. He spoke as if he had already seen the future. The start of the fight seemed to confirm the critics. Liston advanced like a wall, heavy, threatening, each blow resounding like thunder in Ali's body. But the young man didn't. Back down he danced. He moved in circles, light, swift, dodging with movements that seemed choreographed. "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee," he said, and that's exactly what he did. Every jab from Ali drew gasps from the crowd. Every dodge disarmed his rival, who was beginning to grow irritated by the difficulty of hitting that agile body that seemed to glide across the ring. By the 3rd round, Ali's confidence no longer felt like arrogance. It was real. He laughed, mocked, raised his arms as if inviting his rival to try again. "It's only a matter of time," he shouted to the crowd, sending them into a frenzy. Backstage, trainers and coaches couldn't believe their eyes. Liston, the man who had knocked down so many, was confused, tired, lost in the face of a young man who fought as if possessed by a vision others couldn't see. By the time the 6th round arrived, Ali's promise hung in the air like a sentence. He had repeated it so many times that the entire gym waited to see if he would have the courage to back up his words. And then, it happened. Ali picked up the pace, unleashed a devastating sequence, and Liston, the seemingly indestructible giant, collapsed before the world. The referee opened the count, but the champion's strength was gone. The impossible was before everyone's eyes. Ali had said it would be in the 6th round, and it was exactly in the 6th round. People weren't just applauding a victory, they were witnessing something greater, almost mystical. A 22-year-old wasn't just defeating one of the most feared boxers in history, he was fulfilling word for word what he'd announced days earlier. It didn't just feel like talent, it felt like destiny. As Ali raised his arms, shouting that he was the greatest of all time. Reporters looked at each other in astonishment. How could he know? Was it pure confidence? Was it arrogance backed by talent? Or was there truly something else, a supernatural intuition that guided him in every fight? No one had an answer, but everyone was certain of one thing: the boxing world would never be the same after that night. The triumph against Liston wasn't just a world title, it was the birth of a legend that, from then on, would take this uncanny ability to predict the future to its extreme. Ali didn't just fight, he announced the fight, and then delivered on his promise, leaving the audience somewhere between euphoria and amazement. It was like watching someone writing their own story before it even happened. From that night on, every time Ali opened his mouth to say which round he would win, no one dared laugh, because he had already proven, in front of millions, that when Ali spoke, the world listened and waited. And that fight against Liston wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the beginning of a streak that would forever mark boxing history. A streak in which Ali would turn predictions into fulfilled prophecies, and promises into indisputable truths. But if everyone celebrated the boy who saw the future that night, few imagined the weight this gift would begin to carry. Because predicting destiny before the cameras and fulfilling it before the world was more than just a spectacle. It was also the building of unbearable pressure. And, little by little, Ali would have to face not only rivals in the ring, but also the very burden of sustaining the impossible. And that's how the story of the day Ali predicted the future began. After Liston, Ali's voice began to carry a weight no one could ignore. It was no longer just provocation, no longer just marketing. It was almost a sentence. Every time he announced the round he would win, newspapers printed it in bold letters. His opponents laughed nervously, and the audience waited in silence to see the impossible happen again. Against Archie Moore, for example, Ali was even more direct. He said, he won't make it past the 4th. He was a veteran, experienced, respected, but there was no way out. In the 4th round, exactly as Ali had declared, Moore was on the ground. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It was as if Ali entered the ring with the script already written in his mind. His rivals sensed it. It wasn't just his punch that intimidated them, it was his gaze. Ali stared at each opponent as if he already knew the outcome of the fight. "You'll go down in the 3rd, he would say, and the phrase echoed in the other boxer's head during every second of the fight. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological. He would enter first, dominate first, dismantle his opponent before the first blow was landed. And most frighteningly, he delivered. It was as if fate had signed a contract with Ollie's mouth against Henry Cooper in England. The scene was even more striking. Ollie announced that the fight would not go beyond the 5th round. Cooper managed to surprise, knocking Ollie down in the 4th. The stadium erupted, but Ollie returned, furious, and made good on his word. In the 5th round, he finished the fight. The British crowd, which had laughed at his confidence, left the gym divided between shock and reverence. Ali not only promised, he seemed to transform every mistake, every hesitation, into further proof that he had control over the future. Journalists began calling him the prophet of the ring. He provoked, rhymed predictions in interviews, and said that the rounds had a set number, as if they were pages in a book only he could read. I'll name the round, and you'll see, because I'm the greatest, and the future is in my mouth. These phrases filled the newspapers, became headlines, and each fight became a spectacle that went beyond boxing. It wasn't just about who would win, it was about whether Ollie would confirm yet another prophecy, and this had a brutal effect on the audience. People began watching the fights not just to see the victory, but to see the fulfillment of the promise. It was like watching a magician reveal his trick before the show, yet still leave everyone open-mouthed when he delivered. The tension wasn't just about the blow, but about the clock. Every second seemed to be ticking against Ali's words. Can he do it again? That question echoed throughout the audience. But there was also a dark side to all this. The more Ali fulfilled his predictions, the greater the pressure. Each new opponent entered the ring not only to try to defeat him, but to prove that the future could be changed. Each round that passed without the promised fall became psychological torture for him. It was as if the audience had stopped expecting only victory. They demanded the spectacle of prophecy fulfilled. Once, after a fight in which Ollie didn't land the promised round, even though he won, he heard boos. It was the first time he felt the weight of having transformed boxing into something more than a sport. Ollie could no longer be just a champion. He had to be a seer, a magician, the master of time. And this burden, little by little, began to become more dangerous than any punch. Still, he didn't stop. He kept rhyming predictions, kept looking into the camera and saying, "Write it down. It'll be in the 3rd, it'll be in the 6th, it'll be in the 8th. And when he got it right, the world went crazy. When he got it wrong, the world demanded it. But still, everyone watched, because no one wanted to miss the moment. Muhammad Ali, the man who claimed to see the future, served another of his sentences. It was impossible not to wonder how long. How long would he be able to sustain this aura? How long would the public see him as an invincible prophet? This doubt, this suspense, made each fight an even greater spectacle than the title at stake. If you've made it this far, you've already realized that this isn't just the story of a boxer, but of a man who defied his own destiny. So, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell because, in the next chapters, you'll see how this pressure nearly destroyed Ollie from within, and how he transformed even his defeats into part of his prophecy. Kinshasa trembles at the bell. George Foreman crosses the ring like a tank, young, brutal, absolute champion. Ollie doesn't back down. He presses his back to the ropes willingly, raises his guard, speaks to the challenger and the world at the same time. He falls in the 8th. To prove I'm great, he repeated this for weeks, with rhyme and smile, like someone who's already read the end of the book. Ollie May, the entire stadium cheers, a chorus that seems to push the air. Angelo Dundee leans in close. No heroics, kid. Ollie winks. Trust. Foreman tests his chin, sweeps his torso, tries to break ribs. The sound of the crosses is like wood cracking. Ali endures, taunts. Is that all, George? Each word is a needle in the pride of the most feared man on the planet. The plan is simple and cruel. Drain the machine, rope-a-dope, lean in, stall, invite the enemy to waste ammunition. Ollie watches Foreman's chest rise higher by the minute, measures his breathing, counts the punches that enter his guard and those that land on his arm. Save your legs, he whispers to himself, whipping out quick jabs just to mark his territory. Foreman throbs with rage. Stop talking, he growls, bringing down sledgehammers that would shake a lamppost. Ollie responds. It doesn't hurt. The crowd goes wild. The ring turns into an oven. The air is thick. Sweat stings the eyes. 3rd round, 4th, 5th. The clock isn't neutral. It's on the side of those who know how to wait. 8. Ollie repeats, almost mutely, as if chanting a number. In the 6th, The champion begins to disfigure his own fatigue. His punch no longer returns with the same speed, his hips lag, his torso betrays it. Ollie notices invisible cracks and, for the first time, comes off the ropes like a ravenous jaguar. 2 jabs, a sidestep, a whisper in his ear. "You're tiring, George." Foreman tries the same devastating right hand and finds no way. 7th round, Ollie whistles inside, spins, jabs, disappears, and reappears. 8. The word that floated all night finally lands. Ollie steps firmly, rolls his shoulder, and unleashes a short, crisp, clean combination. The final right hand pierces the guard and obliterates Foreman's legs. The giant sinks to the hot Sairan ground, as if gravity had been elevated to judge. Countdown, silence, explosion, prophecy fulfilled. What rises from the ring is not just a champion again. It's a myth sealed in the very word. I said the 8th. He said it and it happened. The press calls it magic, psychological chess, daring. Friends call it faith. Rivals begin to hear rounds as threats. Archie Moore in the 4th, Henry Cooper in the 5th, now Foreman in the 8th. The list gains flesh, data, and sweat. But glory comes at a high price. Kidneys ache, ribs sing at night. The ice becomes a pillow, and the curse of the promise grows. Because, from then on, winning isn't enough. You have to win as announced. Each fight becomes a public bet against time, against your body, against doubt. Then Ollie realizes his mouth has built a gilded cage. The more he gets it right, the more the world demands he get it right again. The question changes form, but pursues him relentlessly. And if the number fails, what remains of the miracle? He stares into the mirror, touches the swelling of victory, hears the echo of the stadium, and understands that prophecies also charge interest. The same voice that made him great now weighs on his shoulders like an invisible belt. And behind the glitter of Kinshasa, the hardest chapter is approaching, when prophecy meets human limits, and the future he so tamed returns to collect its bill. Brace yourself, because the next chapter begins when the body says enough is enough. The Manila bell cuts through the air like a blade. Frazier walks in a semicircle, chin buried, eyes blazing. Ollie doesn't smile. For the first time in years, he avoids clinching the round. He rhymes Thrilla in Manila, taunts the gorilla, but swallows the number. The night is an oven, the lights bake the ring. The first clinch already burns his back. "Don't let him breathe," yells Eddie Fooch. Angelo Dundee responds. "Tie him up and skin him from the inside." Ollie retreats to the ropes, beckons Frazier closer, measuring the distance with his short jab. Foreman was thunder. Frazier is a constant hammer, hammering the guard, digging into the torso. In the 3rd, a left hook buckles the champion's legs. He pretends to laugh, but feels the earth disappear beneath his feet. It's just a warm-up. He lies to himself. The heat erases thoughts. The ropes become both shelter and trap. The clock throbs in his ear. Ollie speaks softly. "Today, the future can wait." Frazier growls. "No miracle. The public doesn't blink. They want blood. They want promises. They want the impossible again." 7th, Frazier's eye sinks into shadow. His face swells, but he doesn't give in. "Come on, champ." He spits through his teeth. Ollie lands in short bursts, returns to the ropes, shakes his glove as if offering his own chest. Sweat turns the stage into a slippery track. His supporting foot slips. His leg screams. In the 9th, Frazier scrapes Ollie's liver. His breath falters. He wraps his arms around his rival's neck, steals seconds, gasps for air, talks to wound. "Is that all, Joe?" The 11th cracks the clock. The two fight against the heat, against their lungs, against ghosts. In the 14th, Eddie Fooch raises his hand and kills the night. Enough, no more. Frazier shakes his head, wanting to return, but sees no light. His eyes have turned to slits. On the other side, Ollie collapses in the chair and says to himself, almost voiceless, "That's the closest I've ever been to death." When the referee calls the end, he tries to get up, but his body is negotiating inches. The belt is returned. The soul is not. The arena roars. The prophecy breathes, but bleeds. The prophecy survives, but changes its voice. After Manila, Ali understands that prediction isn't a trick. It's a pact with pain. He returns to training, with his body in protest, rough elbows, stubborn knees, hands submerged in buckets of ice. He still rhymes, still provokes, but weighs every syllable. The journalists ask for the old show, which round, champ? He responds with short smiles and long silences. At night, in the dark room, the audience still screams in their hearts. Dundee asks if it's worth it. Ollie replies yes, that the world needs the miracle. that the boy from Louisville needs the myth, but the math has changed. Each promised number now has a fixed cost in flesh. When the training ends, there's ice on his wrists and holy water on his head. He prays, quietly, asks for breath, asks for lucidity to know how to keep quiet. But when the cameras turn on, the temptation returns. It's so easy to return control to the chaos with a sentence. And the audience, hungry, demands, name the round. Ollie swallows the answer and pretends he's already said it. He breathes, it weighs. The number has always been an anchor against panic. When he said 6th, 8th, 4th, Ollie tamed the chaos before it bit him, but the body doesn't negotiate with promises. Mornings arrive with tingling fingers, thick speech, and fatigue that won't yield to a cold shower. Questions arise that have no place in a press conference. What if the prophecy fails again? What if the myth trembles? He faces the camera, manages smiles, raises his charisma, and protects his aura like invisible security. Inside he reviews fights like someone checking accounts. Liston at 6, Moore at 4, Cooper at 5, Foreman at 8. Each hit was worth a slice of life, and still, they demand more. In the empty gym, the sound of the bag echoes like a clock. Ali talks to the leather. I control the time. The leather doesn't answer. Dundee purses his lips. You don't have to promise anything, but the crowd has taught him. Promises sell peace. Doubt sells fear. And Ollie, who grew up facing fear with words, tries to learn silence without appearing defeated. Yes, Manila pushes Muhammad Ali into a corridor of no return. On one side, the hero who dictates time. On the other, the man who must outlive it. The title returns to his shoulders. Glory returns to the covers. But victory tastes metallic. He feels the weight of the crowd demanding another prediction, another timed miracle, another I told you so. He closes his eyes, breathes, remembers. Foreman at 8 and Liston at 6, and understands every prophecy has an expiration date. When it expires, it accrues interest. The next bell is already ringing in the back of his head. There's a name waiting in line. There are calendars, exams, contracts, microphones. Ollie walks to the locker room as if crossing a bridge that only goes forward. Each step demands a memory. Each flash demands a number. Each journalist demands a destination. He looks into the camera and almost says it. Almost. Then he pockets the phrase and walks because the final chapter accepts no rush. It's when the future, finally, stops obeying. Ahead, an old friend becomes an abyss. The name returns as an echo. Caesar's palace boils under the lights, and Larry Holmes walks like a sentence. Ollie rises slowly. He doesn't promise a round, doesn't rhyme fate. He sits, takes a shallow breath, looks at Angelo Dundee, and pretends nothing hurts. The bell opens a night without tricks. Holmes strikes straight, patient, as if dismantling. An altar Ollie tries to dance and finds the ground heavy, his body half a second late, his memory demanding breath. It's okay, he says through gritted teeth. Dundee sees the truth in his eyes and lies along with him. In the 4th, the 5th, the 8th, hope fades. The ropes don't respond as before. The jab doesn't arrive in time. In the 10th, the bench welcomes a man who still wants to fight and a trainer who has learned to love more than applaud. Enough, says Angelo, his hand on the invisible towel. One more, whispers Ali, stubborn as ever. Not today. The referee raises his arm, and the night collapses in silence. There was no prophecy. There was courage to survive without it. It hurt more than a blow. A year later, NASA Trevor Berbick awaits a weary hero. Ollie wears the last dance. There are no numbers, only dignity. The bell announces farewell, not spectacle. He moves his feet as if refusing to say goodbye, but his body negotiates each step. The blows land short. Time responds with delay. The audience understands and protects. With silence, between rounds, Ali stares at his own hands. The bandages look like maps of all the promises he's ever made. I still know who I am, he murmurs. On the other side, Berbick respects and attacks. No cowardice, no lies. 12 rounds later, the decision points the other way. Ollie takes a deep breath and nods. In the locker room, the noise of the world fades. The cloth falls from his shoulder. The sweat cools. His voice low. Is it over? Angelo asks. Ollie smiles with ancient sweetness. It's over for today. He hugs friends, gathers his gloves as if collecting a portrait. The future, finally, is released. The prophecy remains silent, and in that silence, the myth remains. Outside, the night seems simple. So the story returns to the beginning and reveals the trick that was never a trick. When Ollie said 6458, he wasn't calling it magic. He was calling it responsibility. Liston in the 6th, Moore in the 4th, Cooper in the 5th, Foreman in the 8th. Numbers that seemed like prophecy were plans with risk, courage, and human calculation. His mouth held the fear outside. If I promise out loud, I have to pay. In the ring, he would say, the prophecy, deep down, was a tool to organize chaos, stealing the opponent's doubt, leading the audience, guiding his own steps. The price came in the same coin: sleepless nights, screaming muscles, the loneliness of the room after the applause. The world applauded the timed miracle. He collected the silent bill, and when the body said no, the same voice learned another strength: silence. Because there are victories born from what is said, and there are victories that begin when you keep your word and choose to live to tell the tale the next morning. And so the myth outlived the man, and the man the myth. Now it's up to you to watch and carry your own fights. No one needs to predict the future to win. Ali taught us that calling the round wasn't foot. It was the courage to make a commitment to the world and pay for it with work. If life corners you, organize the chaos with a phrase that pushes you forward. Choose a number, a deadline, a step, not to impress, but to remind yourself of who you are. And when your body says no, may there be wisdom in stopping, breathing, and starting over. Promises without delivery become tricks. Promises with delivery build destiny. The clock is neutral, but willpower is not. You don't control the judges, the crowd, or the heat of the arena, but you do control the decision to stay standing. If you're afraid, speak up. If you make a mistake, learn. If you get it right, be grateful. The day Ollie predicted the future was, in fact, the day a man decided his words would be the road. Walk your own path. The rest, time confirms. Fight. Future usually follows those who act.